All right, folks, humans, anything in between, or whatever the fuck. We are here today. You can see that there is rain on the way here at Hungary for round 14 of SRL. As you can obviously see, as I am on the grid for the race, that I did not get qualifying saved. My recording only saves the last hour of gameplay, so apologies to that when the race runs long, like Hungary does when it rains. Excuse me, burping. Then I can't get both qualifying and the race in one recording unless if I remember to save the recording after qualifying and then remember to do it again after the race. It's a lot of remembering for an old man like me. So we are here at Hungary. Qualifying was pretty straightforward. I got second. Um, Freya Balai, I've been saying his name wrong the whole time. He is on pole position. He had a very fast qualifying lap, but I noticed that he has more straight line speed. So I was thinking maybe he has more of a dry setup that maybe we can be quicker in the wet, or maybe even be a little bit quicker on race trim. But you know, we'll see. Got some fast guys behind us. It's pretty much a four-car race up front lately in SRL between Freya in the McLaren, myself, Nicolo in the Alfa Romeo, and obviously Jensen in the Aston Martin. Going into this race, the plan was to do a mediums to softs run, but with the rain coming, I luckily picked the soft allocation of tire to make sure I had a fresh set even after all of my qualifying runs. And yeah, we will be running softs, and they will easily last until the rain comes. And then if it does dry up at the end, we will go into a set that I use for qualifying, but that ain't that bad, and that's also a long way from now. And it would also depend how many safety cars we would get if we even get to dry running at the end of the race. The forecasts are not perfectly accurate, which I think is a great thing because IRL forecasts are not perfectly accurate. So yeah, definitely an interesting race on our hands, and this is a track that I love in league racing. While it is a track that's pretty difficult to overtake and such, it's the track I got my first ever league racing win, and it's probably, statistically speaking, my most successful track in league racing. In most F1 games, it's my fastest track in terms of time trial rankings. That is not the case in this year's game. I mean, I'm pretty quick here in time trial, don't get me wrong, but it's not my fastest track, but I got a really good... I'm getting better at adjusting setups myself personally and adjusting them specifically for race trim, which is something you really got to do in this year's game. And yeah, I was confident coming into this race. It's a track that I have a history of being good at. You can see Freab ahead is starting on the medium, so he wasn't sure if the softs are going to make it, so we should have advantage on him coming off the line. Like I said, I know we got good race pace. I'm confident in the wet. I've always been very strong in the wet, so I always have two thumbs up when I see wet weather in league racing. It might be grim looking, but on the inside, it's all sunshine. So when I see rain in league racing. So without further ado, and me rattling on for any longer, the race is going to get underway. The 5 lights are coming on here for the Hungary Grand Prix. Lights out, random catchphrase. We launch off the grid. We get a better reaction time. And right here you can see this is what I'm talking about with his straight line speed. We got a much better start both in terms of tire and reaction time. And he was still able to maintain, we didn't pull away. Once we got side by side, his straight line speed advantage started catching up. So I was worried coming out of this corner, even though I would have more traction, that he would be able to get me with the straight line speed into turn 2. But it did not happen. We're able to hold on to the lead, and just like that, we're into the lead of the race. Nicolo behind also started on the medium tires, and then Jensen behind in 4th started on the softs. So that's a couple people on medium tires, hopefully to hold up Jensen in the meantime so I can maintain the lead until the wet weather running comes. And I felt very comfortable on this track. I don't know what it is about this track. I just always feel comfortable here. I had a good setup, made good adjustments to it for specifically the race, and yeah, now we're just out front and we will see how the gaps unfold. I'm not too panicking if someone is fast enough to catch me and overtake me early on, as long as I'm still running in the lead group. A lot of racing to come, and most of it's going to be under wet weather, so that's really, we get to the meat of the bones in this race, so to say. I've pulled it forward to lap 4. We were able to pull away from the medium runners behind. Jensen was not able to just fly by them. He said going into this race he was kind of struggling for pace compared to how he usually is, which is good news for us because he's obviously a quick driver. And at about this time, I don't know if It hasn't quite happened yet, but really soon the rain is going to start coming down, and that's why we have come to this moment, give you an update on the gaps. We're able to pull away from the cars behind by a couple seconds, and with the rain coming, you will see what happens here. Take a little bit too much of curve there on the inside. But yeah, this is a great start for me. I'm managing everything like how I planned it to be. It's definitely soft where the tire to be on at the beginning of this race before the wet weather running. And we know that we always have pace in the wet, even though I don't think we've had any wet weather racing in SRL this season. But in general, in league racing in all F1 games, I've always been strong in the rain. So hopefully it's no exception here. You can see the rain has now begun here at Hungary. So the question now is, it's a matter of time until it's time for inters. It's how quickly does that time come? That is the big question. And the bad part about me being in front of everyone is that I don't have the information of what other people do until it's too late. So they can kind of just react to what I do, but I can already tell that it's losing grip very quickly. And yeah, the track conditions are deteriorating rapidly. I can feel it under braking. I can't hold a racing line with this car. And looking back at it, it doesn't look like it's that bad, but I remember feeling this. I was certain that by the time I come out of the pits here, pitting right now, that it's already going to be the crossover point. Like, I could really feel the grip going away quickly. And honestly, even if it was a second or two slower to pit on this lap, I would still take that in hindsight, which ended up being the right play, by the way. But even if it was the wrong play, a second or two slower, I still would make this, because being on those intermediate tires in these kind of tricky conditions is more stable and easier to drive, and I'd rather not throw away the whole race in very tricky, half-wet conditions on slicks than, be a hero, gain a couple of seconds of time in a very, very risky situation. When we basically have a whole, this is the race now, the wet weather running at Hungary, this is the race, and this is the pace on these tires is what's going to determine the winner. So I didn't want to throw it away before we got to this point. But luckily it was the right call. We did feel the track accurately, and now we are onto the intermediate tires. You probably saw when I look back that everyone came in behind me, but not Nicolo. Nicolo stayed out, and some of the midfield runners did as well. But in terms of the front four I mentioned, myself, Friab, Nicolo, and Jensen, Nicolo is the only one to stay out. So we will see what the gap is. You can see DRS disabled. This definitely was the right call to pit on that first lap right after rain came out, which is something rare to see, especially when it didn't go straight to heavy rain. This is just light rain, but it transitioned in, quarter of a lap, basically. So very quick transition period. I'm catching these cars ahead, but luckily these are all just cars I haven't pit yet, so they will all be hopping into their box. My teammate included, as you see him almost going side by side with the competition into the pit lane. Very sketchy situation there. And at the start of lap 7, we don't see Nicolo coming out in front of us, which is music to our ears for obvious reasons. Being in the lead is good last time I checked. And now it's just getting a feel for the wet conditions, feeling how my setup feels. And the good news is it felt very good. And I was able to ease into the limit on these tires. Setup felt good, car felt good. I was getting quicker and quicker in these conditions as it progressed. And yeah, the rain will go to heavy rain, so the question now will be, will we get to a point where it's quicker to make an extra stop onto full wets and then have to stop again back onto inters? So it will kind of depend how long that full wet period will be, and maybe safety cars will change that as well. Pull it forward now. This is the end of lap 10, coming out of the final quarter. Everything's still going good here, folks. If anything, I can be more aggressive with my ERS. When I look back there, you can see we got a little bit of a gap here. I believe at this point the gap was about 3.5 seconds, something like that. And before I pit, it was about 2.5. So I've been consistently a couple tenths of a second faster than the competition behind. But to me, more importantly, I wasn't over pushing the car. This is a pace I could comfortably replicate throughout the rest of the race. And it was quick enough to actually pull myself ahead of the field a little bit. So that was very encouraging for me to see. So yeah, the wet weather running, good. My pace at Hungary, good. Everything's turning up Millhouse for us so far today. as the laps would tick by, at this part of the lap, I would be consistently asking every lap what the conditions are like and what tire is faster. So I would know right before I go to the pits, like the closest feasible spot where I can ask the question on the MFD before getting to the pits and also saying I'm going to box. To see what the conditions are to know, like, hey, is it time to switch to the wet tires? But as the track was getting worse, you know, I was still feeling fine, don't get me wrong, and the pace was still good compared to the competition. I was still slowly pulling away. But I was actually surprised that we didn't reach a point when I thought we would, that the hard, I mean, sorry, not the hard tires, the full wet tires would actually be faster than the intermediate. So that was kind of surprising to see. But, you know, when you're in a situation where you're the fastest car on track and in the lead, you know, you're perfectly okay with the status quo staying as it is. It can stay exactly light rain, intermediate conditions like this until the very end of the race. You ain't gonna hear a peep out of me, let me tell you. Now we are on lap 19. A little sketchy coming out of that corner, but all is under control. And we get to slow down here and build up a battery because we have a virtual safety car. Now the question is, will it be worth pitting if the virtual safety car is still out when we get to the pits? But that doesn't matter because one of the new drivers, well, this is his second race, so decently new, crashes himself out on purpose, brings out a full safety car. So, transitions to a full safety car. I kind of didn't want to see this because, like I said, as the status quo stood in the race, we were just cruising away from the field. But at the same time, we're still in a position where, you know, it's Hungary. It's not like they're going to be able to just slipstream and pass me right off the restart. And I'll be able to rock my pace. And my pace has been consistently just a little bit faster than the rest of the field. It is close, but I am still looking safe to be able to stay in the lead. But, you know, I just got to fight for it a little bit more, I guess. So, yeah, still very not worried at this point. I can see the tires are over 40% warm, and with 16 laps to go, definitely am going to have to pit again, even if it stays wet the rest of the way. But as I saw kind of what was happening with the weather, I saw two things. One, we got to a point where inters and wets were about the same pace. They were saying it was the crossover point. But the engineer said that while it had transitioned to heavy rain, it is now transitioning back to light rain, which means at the worst, the conditions were at the point where hards, I mean, yeah, I keep saying hards, wets and inters were the same. So for a lot of the race, inters are better. We got to a point where they're about equal. But now the track's going to slowly get better again as the rain eases off a bit. So I definitely thought that, you know, because of that, I thought definitely inters. Another set of inters is going to be the play. And that is a lap car passing that already pit, so we don't have to worry about that. We still remain in the lead as everyone else came in because everyone was going to have to pit again, assuming that this race does go to the end. Yes, Magenta, or he tries to let me go, but I can't. No, it's Ivan Burrito, but I can't let him. I mean, he can't let me go because I'm not allowed to overtake anyone, even lap cars under the safety car. A little bit of miscommunication there, but hey, no harm, no foul. I appreciate the gesture of him trying to let the leaders go by. And yeah, fresh inters. Looks like it's going to be inters running to the end. Maybe. It's a question of if it's going to dry up in time. I was thinking that it would dry up in time, but the question would kind of be like Austria, where does it dry up with enough laps to go that it's actually worth making that pit stop? Because the intermediate tires, ever since, I think, 22, the game, like the intermediates on a dry track is not that terrible. It's not like the older games where they were like 7 seconds slower or something. Now they're only like 2 seconds slower. So that means that you need a lot more dry running laps at the end of a race for it to be worth pitting off inners onto the dry tires. All right, it is restart time. Still, Freya Balai is behind me, and he does have a setup with more straight line speed than me, so I'm going to cut the angle a little bit to try to make them think that I'm going to launch right away. Hesitate a little bit as I get the full throttle, and that at least gave me a tiny bit of a gap, but you can see he's gaining quickly on me. But our setup higher wings, we can be later on the brakes. He doesn't launch it down the inside. I was ready for a dive bomb. I was going to go on the outside just in case. And we were able to stay ahead. We had enough grip coming out of the corner to have a good enough run down to turn 2 that, just like on lap 1, we just stay ahead. And now we just got to ignore those proximity arrows and just keep driving to the best of our ability. Hopefully not get dive bombed. We do not. And yeah, now it's just back to where we were, except now, you know, unfortunately the field is now caught up to me. But we don't have to worry about pretty much anything to the end of this race. You know, if it dries up, yeah, there'll be the question of is it worth pitting. But other than that, you know, I don't have anyone in front of me, no lap cars in front of me to deal with. I don't have to worry about pit stops or anything. I don't have to worry about fuel. I don't have to worry about tires. I don't have to worry about nothing. Just raw driving to the end. And yeah, I'm in the lead at Hungary and feeling comfortable, so I can't complain about that. 3 laps later, you know, end of lap 25, now starting lap 26, you can see a little bit of the proximity arrow still there. I was able to pull away a couple of tenths, but he is still within about a second of me. So while I'm not just flying away from the rest of the field, I am quick enough that they can't catch up to me and fight me for my position. We're about equal in pace right now, which is fine by me. You know, I'm driving in a way that I'm not making mistakes. I don't have any warnings. Cars behind can't threaten me. Everything is still good here, folks. And now with 10 laps to go, as long as nothing else happens, we are actually looking pretty good here. Kick it forward a few more laps. I was able to eke out a couple more tenths, but you know, he's still thereabouts. It's about a second the gap is from me to him behind, and then not far behind him, within a second of him, is Jensen as well. So we got a little bit of a front-running group here. I wasn't able to pull away in this stint. They started driving better behind me in the wet conditions on the fresh set of inters, catching on a little bit to, you know, how far you can push the car. And yeah, I'm still just focusing on just not making any mistakes, just letting my natural pace speak for itself. I don't need to over push the car. Everything is going good as it stands. Feel comfortable, and when we come to the line, it will be a 5-lap sprint to the end of the race. But we did hear on the radio that the rain will be ending shortly. So unless if it ends and the track dries up super quick, like, I don't think that it is going to be worth pitting. And honestly, I'm hoping that it doesn't get to that because, one, DRS, I don't want that to get activated with the straight line speed of Freeabilized setup. And two, when I'm winning a race in the wet, why would I want the conditions to change? Am I right? Midway point of the 32nd lap, everything's still good. Rain's still coming down lightly, but is still coming down. At this point, I have opened up over a 1 second gap. I believe it was a somewhere between a 1.2 and a 1.4 second gap. But nonetheless, that means there will not be DRS if the track does dry up. And at this point, you know, the rain is still coming down, which means worst case scenario, it'll dry up if the rain stopped like right now in 1 lap time. That would be lap 33. I don't think it's worth pitting for 2 laps in the dries, especially when you factor in track position at Hungary. So we're going to be running these inters. I'm committed to the end of the race. And as we come around the last couple corners, it is still raining. And with 3 laps to go, this is music to my ears because it means just straight running in the conditions I've been leading in for the rest of the race. Got over a second gap if DRS is activated. So yeah, everything is going good. Nothing out of our control has fucked us yet, so it's very different from most of the races this season, and let's hope it stays like that for the last 10% of the contest. The rain did just stop. Not quite stop. Now it has stopped, but the track was drying, even though the rain is still barely a little bit coming down. The track conditions were ever improving with the cars going over it, clearing off the racing line. So you saw there at the end of the first sector of lap 34, the penultimate lap, DRS is enabled, and it is official. You can feel, we could slowly feel the grip coming to us in the last 5 laps here. It is definitely a conditions. While it doesn't really look like it, slick tires are a little bit faster. So yeah, just got to hold on for a little bit over a lap. At the time, I was like a little bit worried. I was like, wait, is Freeb within a second of me behind? But I realized, like, no, he's 1.6 behind, so I was able to pull a couple more tenths away. So I just got to keep it clean for 1 more lap and pick up our second win of the season. Not really an eventful race here, folks, but like I said last season, I'm okay with boring races. I tend to win the boring races. You can see my awesome analog stick pull my view to the left because I have a massive stick drift on my right stick. Come across the line and we win by 2.6 seconds. Jensen comes home in 3rd. Colo in 4th. Our teammate gets 5th. So we are still in the constructors fight as well. And yeah, another solid win for us. Great performance, and nothing fucked us. I didn't have to use the anal lube that I had sitting inside the TV. Jokes aside, fun race. Thank you guys for watching, and we see you soon in the next one.